your Thursday along with warmer temperatures, high 87. That's the forecast on the mighty 1630 KCJJ. Right now it's 69.
And it is Wednesday. It's the noon hour. That means it is time for Senior Talk, which is brought to you by the Soul and American Legion and Windmill Manor in Coralville. And here's your host, Rex Brandstatter.
Well, hello there. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rex Brandstatter. Thank you so much, Tommy. I just listened to some of the news there at the top of the hour, and, listening to Senior Talk is kind of like sitting in a hammock and listening to something decent, I hope, for God's sake. Boy, there's a lot going on around the world. You know, those fires in Hawaii, if you've ever been to Maui Island out there, which we were fortunate enough to go out there and watch Iowa play football. You could run, it's like a cornfield in Iowa. You run about 100 yards any direction, you can jump in the ocean. And that's what they're doing out there. People are getting pushed over to the edge of the ocean, jumping in the ocean just to get away from the fires. Unbelievable. And I just see they're having wind gusts of 50 miles an hour. Well, we have those here all the time, folks. So not good. Everybody has their issues. Well, listen, welcome to Senior Talk. You betcha. Wednesday afternoon, it's a rainy day, and we haven't been able to say it's a rainy day. I couldn't tell you. I think Tommy was only 4 years old the last time we had a rainy day around here. We'll take what we have here. You know, it is what it is. We deal with it every day. But it's just kind of nice to have a rainy day, and we're certainly not getting much rain out of it like the farmers would want, but it has cooled down. Isn't that really wild, the heat we had during Ragbri Week 2 weeks ago? All that heat, and now you need a jacket out today. It's just strange. It is what it is, folks. We all know that here in Iowa. So, well, Senior Talk, the weekly radio program where we try to identify, examine, and share important and timely information for you and we, fellow seniors. And thank you so much for tuning in and also spending a few moments of your busy day to listen to Senior Talk. I'll do my best to bring a lot of and fun and interesting senior information to you and maybe some fun recollections of past people, places, things and events, things that we seniors seem to do the best at, remembering something 75 years ago or 26 years ago. That's what we do best. My name is Rex Brandstatter. I'm 74 years old, and I think that we seniors have a lot on our minds, and we're going to talk about it. And there isn't a day that goes by as a senior that you don't hear about one of your friends, which I have just today, hear about a friend who's having some real health issues. And in fact, I have two lady friends, yeah, for sure, of our family, having some real health issues, and neither one of them have a lot of bright lights in the future. It's just the way it is. It's not good. Nothing we can do about it for sure. Well, thank you so much for listening to Senior Talk. Get yourself a sandwich and a nice cold root beer. Sit back and see what we can cook up. I've been a licensed real estate broker since 1974, helping lots and lots of people buy and sell houses, investment properties, commercial properties. And if you need anything like that, you can give me a call. I have a senior line, 330-5534, 330-5534. And I ask you if you looking for maybe a contractor or someone to to help some people. This last week, I had a guy come over. And they had a television dish on top of their house when they bought it, and they had it removed. The last people had it removed, and they left all the wires coming down the side of the house. So I talked to these folks about their house, possibly selling it, and they said, we need a guy to come over and get on the roof and take the wires down. So I arranged that and a couple of small repairs inside, and I can help you too. I can give you some names, and you can call those vendors. I call them vendors, and whatever you might need. Now, I had the best call of the week just yesterday. It was an email. And here's what the gentleman says. He said, Rex, I have just either inherited or come across, I think he said inherited, a one-armed bandit, a slot machine. And I said, well, good. I've seen those around. I see them now and then at a place like that. And he said, well, I inherited. So I said, I think he said this. It takes two keys, and I only have one key. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. And I said, well, he said, what can we do about that? I said, well, I don't know, but I do have a friend who's a locksmith here in town, true story, good friend. And I said, maybe he can get into it, because I have a couple of old-fashioned gumball machines. They look like a globe, and wherever you go, you see the yellow inside of the yellow ones and the green ones, and I always got the black one, which I hate, for a penny. Remember those things you put your penny in and slide the thing over? Well, I have two of those. And I gave one of them to the old car museum out in Coralville, So they've got it in like an old gas station setting out there. If you haven't been to the Eastern Iowa Antique Auto Museum, folks, it's right next to the Iowa Historical Society, right on East 9th Street, right diagonally across the street from 30 Hopper Restaurant. It's the place to go, next to the Iowa Athletic Club. Go in the door there on East 9th Street and go down the steps, or take the elevator, which is right there inside the door. Go down and see those two museums. So I talked to my good friend Tom down at the Auto Museum, told him about this, and he says, well, I have a guy that one of his car guys might be able to tinker around and fix that thing. So we've got to get that first key. If we can get that first key, I'll help my friend get that first key, I hope, or we'll have my buddy the locksmith get into it. We're going to crack into that thing. They are, I'm not. They're going to crack into that thing and see what kind of loot is in there, if any, for sure. So that's the kind of fun stuff that you get once in a while when you offer to help people out. And we'll have some fun with it. I'll report back on this. I'm probably in for a large portion of the haul on that. Probably not. Ha! Well, we've had some really, really good sweet corn at our house, and now's a really good time. There are some sweet corn fields that I see are still not picked, so we're going to have sweet corn for a while. And this is Iowa, and I don't care what anybody else says. We have the best, and we've had some very good sweet corn in our house. So get out there and pick some up and have at it. It's Iowa. Make yourself a BLT. Just talked to a friend of mine this morning. We're going to have a BLT for supper. Well, wow, as a senior, that's a big deal for sure. So good luck. If that rang a bell with you, good luck, and go get the ingredients and have at it. So have you tried to drive around town lately? Now, I could ask this question any month, any day of the week, any month of the year. If you tried to drive around Iowa City lately, when I mean Iowa City, I mean the whole area here. The town is full of street repairs. Full. East side, west side, Coralville, North Liberty, Tiffin, 965, anywhere you want to go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's honestly just another summer in Iowa City. It's just another day, just another rite of passage here. Now, I ask you this question, and I know I'll hear the answers. I'm sitting here right now. I know I'll hear the answers. Here's the question. How many will be done by football time? How many of these road projects will be completed by Iowa's first home game? Well, the answer to that is a few, but not many. The one that's driving me the baddest is the one at the Interstate 80 and First Avenue in Coralville. That is an absolute mob scene right now. It is backed up all directions. Wait until they try to get into a football game here. They're coming from the west, getting off at First Avenue. If you have friends or relatives coming for a football game, I'd tell them to get here 4 hours before the game or more and avoid that intersection for sure. No matter which way you come in, that would be one to avoid. It is absolutely horrible. It's just on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a mess. So look out. It's going to be that way for a couple more years, all right? I want you to do your friends a favor and tell them now. Well, I ran into a high school classmate who I've not seen for at least a decade or more at the Coral Ridge Mall the other day, and he looks great. And you just never know anymore when you're a senior. I went to my class reunion, my 56. We were supposed to have a 55, but COVID kind of set it back, so a year, I guess. We had that, and some of the people look good, and now we're all in our mid-70s. Some of them a little challenging look. They probably thought I looked a little challenging. I don't know. But some of them really looked challenging. And you know something? We had kids, classmates. We had kids in walkers, a couple with cane. It's just sad to see that. It's just what it is. I was just kind of taken back. And my buddy who I saw, he's an ex-cop, and he looked great. And we had a good talk right there at the Coral Ridge Mall. So you just never know. He doesn't live around here. You just never know who you might run into. Well, this week I've had some really good fun and interesting conversations with fellow seniors. And I thought, how about this one? Rex, I'm only 50, and I'm getting mail from AARP. What's the scoop on that? Well, that might come as a shock to you when you're 50, but to those of us who've been on the mailing list for a long time, that's when they start. Remember here on Senior Talk, I think when you're 60, you're a senior. All right, when you're 60, you're a senior or older adult. How's that sound? All right, that's my take here. But when you're 50, you're talking to a group of AARP, American Association for the Retirement Persons. They're jumping the gun in my book. They're trying to get you to join their group, subscribe to their magazine, so they can pound whatever politics they have, which they do have, into your skull and go from there. They offer you discounts on insurance. They have a magazine that puts out, has some nice stories on it. No question about that. I do read that. But anyhow, it's pretty normal. As soon as you turn 50, you're going to get pounded on by AARP group, and you can join, not join, totally up to you. But you're on their list now for a long, long time. You're not. They're not going to go anywhere. There's coupons for discounts, insurance products, all kinds of things that you probably don't care about, but that's what it is. So that's the scoop. So yes, you're going to get this stuff for a long time. A senior lady says to me, my husband passed away 5 years ago. I just got another bill in the mail today from some clinic that he went to. When will this ever stop? Now, this lady's husband passed away 5 years ago, and she's still getting mailings. Well, my dad was gone 3 years. We finally got a bill from a clinic at the university, as a matter of fact, for 3 years. And so I called him and I said, we had no idea this was coming, so I'm going to take 3 years to pay it. And I did. I waited to the end of the 3 years, and I got a couple of nasty letters from him. I said, I didn't write you, I didn't write you a nasty letter. Why are you writing me one? You didn't send it for 3 years. So anyhow, this 5 years in the mail, that's pretty normal, and here's my best advice on that. First of all, it's 5 years. I'm not saying you don't owe it. I'm not going to say that. But I will say this, I would really check out the invoice, because maybe, there are scammers out there for sure, and maybe they somehow have information that have your address and things like that, and they send out a bill that I don't know how much it was, but you're just going to say, well, okay, it's 5 years, but we better go ahead and pay this, and it's a total scam. So I want you to check out the invoice. Call the office number on. There got to be an office number on there or a contact. And again, if you don't recognize the number, don't call it. If you don't recognize the location, don't call it. Don't do that. Just kind of sit down and study the envelope. Maybe ask someone else in your family what they think, if it looks legit. If it doesn't look legit, anything like that, don't just do whatever you want to do. But I wouldn't rush into paying it. After 5 years, why pay it right away? I'd let that thing sit until you can check that thing out from top to bottom. Absolutely, for sure. We'll see what happens on that. Well, let's talk some things right here on Senior Talk. Let's cut right to the chase. One of the reasons that I am here on Senior Talk is because I'm trying to get people to get organized on a lot of different things in life. Meaning, for the most part, I do my very best to encourage you and entice you, goad you, push you, drag you into starting a little program where you get rid of some things that you no longer need and or use. In other words, you have so many things you bought, now have 4 of them because you didn't know you had the first 3 once you started cleaning things out. So that's been a really good, fun part of my job. I've had lots and lots of people call and tell me we got started and we had a good time, and we're still taking stuff out. We find stuff all the time. I had a lady call me a couple weeks ago, and she said, I emptied so much stuff out, now the inside of my house looks bigger. The way I always wanted it when I moved in here. I wanted a bigger house with just me. Well, now she's back to having the bigger house, and she didn't move. All she did was get rid of some stuff. And I'm probably being nice when I call it stuff. Could be junk. It could be, or less. Get rid of stuff. And it's a big ongoing thing. It is taking the country by storm. It really, truly is. Why not do that? You can donate things. You can bequeath things early, so to speak. Give them away, sell them, whatever you want to do. Get rid of stuff, folks. Well, here's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. I'm going to hit you right between the nose here, and let's do a little blunt work here. Blunt, B-L-U, up front. If someone in your family, now let's say that the standard listener here to Senior Talk, I'm going to do an average here, is a husband and wife, 2 people, 2 adults, one male, one female, married, not, I don't care, none of my business. Or if you're a single person, whatever it may be, let's answer these questions. I'll ask them, and you see if you can answer them. Number 1, these things happen every day in this country, all right? If you dropped over today, what would your spouse or your other family know? What would they know? Number 1, would they know who or how to call for funeral arrangements. Oh, my God, Charlie died. He just dropped over. Well, this happens, folks. What are we going to do? Who do I call? I called my son, and he lives in South Dakota. And he said, well, for gosh sakes, I'll be right down, which, take him all day. We've got to get the funeral home. We got to call somebody. Look up online. If you don't know, there's 2 funeral homes in town. You got to call one of them, or maybe you should call the police to come and see. Call the coroner. Who do you call? Well, you can. These are questions. If you can't answer, you need to find out. I'll help you. Need to find out. After you organize all that, you get all that. Well, you don't have to do anything. But if you put an obituary, an obit, it's called, in the paper, what are you going to say? What would you want to say? Would you want to say a whole lot? Would you want to say not much? Would you want to at least make some acknowledgement as to what Mrs. Smith, your Mrs. Smith, did, or maybe where she worked, or what who her offspring are, her remaining family members are? Just a little bit of background. It's closure, if not for you, it's closure for your friends and other people. What do you think that they would like to say what would you like to have said in your obituary? Well, if you don't write it down, I've done this. I've written mine down. Sounds crazy, but who knows, folks? What do you think you should say? What do you think your husband would want to say? Well, he'd like everybody to know that he was a Cardinal fan or a Cubs fan, and he liked a duck hunt. He's going to miss all his friends down at the Hy-Vee grocery kitchen, coffee clutch type of thing, stuff like that. Yeah, it's just a few things. Maybe this doesn't make any sense to you. I don't know. Do you even have a cemetery? Like, oh, my God, Charlie died. We just called the funeral home a bit now. Well, what are we going to do? Well, the funeral homes will help you with that. Well, he doesn't want to be buried at Memory Garden. We like to go to Oakland Cemetery. We'd like to go to Corville Cemetery or Tiffin Cemetery. We want to go to the North Liberty Cemetery. Well, you can arrange those things now, ladies and gentlemen. You can do that now. Well, Rex, we're feeling great. Well, I realize that. But if you do some homework now, do you think you won't need these things? Have I said anything you won't need? No. Have I said anything you really don't want to deal with? Well, of course. I don't know that. Well, Bob died, after off the arrangements for a funeral, things like that. Insurance, he had a life insurance policy. Well, where is it? Who's it with? How much is it for? The life insurance company's not going to call you. Who was the agent? I don't remember. I think he bought that but he's not in the insurance business anymore. What do we do? You're befuddled with all these things. You've got to get on these things. At the funeral, what special music or other remembrances would he or she want at the funeral? Is there a special song that you both sort of lived with or lived by, or he always liked or she always wanted to play? That's a beautiful song. I'd like to have that played at my funeral. Well, if you don't know, folks, this can get complicated, and it doesn't have to be. These are all easy type things. Do you have the money for a funeral? Do you have money to buy the plot, to do the funeral, to buy all the arrangements, the casket, the cremation? Do you have the money for that? I don't know. You can go online to either the Gay and Chia Funeral Home or Lindsay Funeral Home and pre-arrangement on their tab up at the top of their page, and you can print off the pre-arrangement. You can go down and talk to them. They do this all the time. They prefer you did this, so they're not in such a scramble to be a detective to find all these things. You could do that, folks. We all need to take some responsibility for our own demise. As crazy as it sounds, it's not even crazy. It's just a topic we don't want to deal with. All right, but we're going to need to do it for sure. Once the funeral is over and time has passed, do you know where you could find the life insurance policies? Did they have one? I don't know. Where are the paperwork? Do you keep them in a file? Do you have a file at your home with your insurance? Who's the agent? When? How much was it for? Was it for $10,000, $350,000, $1 million? You don't know. If you do, I don't know. You have to do these things. Get on it, folks. Please get on it. He or she will lose a monthly income. All right, now you're both retired. We're going to say you're both retired, and you both have some money in the bank, of course, and you have a little income from a little duplex you own, and I'm going to say you're both getting either a pension and or a Social Security. We're going to call it Social Security. Well, as soon as, we'll say Bob Smith passed away, Bob is going to lose his Social Security. So now Mrs. Smith is going to be, there'll be one less income coming in. Now here's the deal with that. If Bob Smith passes away and Mrs. Smith is still here, and Bob Smith was getting $500 a month more than Mrs. Smith, after she deals with the Social Security Administration, who do you call there? Well, you're going to have to get in the Yellow Pages online, figure it out. There's an office in Coralville. When Mr. Smith is gone, his income will go, and Mrs. Smith will be down to one income. However, she can take the higher of the two. So if his was $500 higher, she now will sign the paper. Hers will increase up to take his level. That makes sense. It could be vice versa. It could be Mrs. Smith, who passed away, and hers is higher than Mr. Smith's. It happens all the time. So now Bob, who's still here, goes up as the spouse's benefit plan. The hard part is the hard part's Bob Smith's gone. That's the hard part. And part of the hard part is his income is gone too. So that could create a hardship for Mrs. Smith or the other one, whoever's still here. Wow. How do you make a house payment or a car payment? Well, we write a check and go down to the bank. Is the checking account in both your names, or was it just in your husband's name, just in your wife's name? There are people that have those, for sure. I guarantee it. How do you do that? Do you have access to the account? Once he dies, do you think you can even write a check? You'd have to check with the bank. You should call the bank this afternoon and talk to a loan officer and say, we'd like to come in and talk to you and sit down here. Well, now what happens if I pass away or Mr. Smith passes away? Do you have a POD, a payment on death, that type of thing? That's called a POD. You could put a POD on your account. Did you know that? Were you aware of that? You need to make some of these things. I had a dental assistant where I used to go with my dentist. He retired. The only reason I don't go there anymore. And she said, did you know my husband had a stroke? I said, I did not. I'm so sorry. She said, well, that was a month ago. And she said he had a brand new pickup truck, 3 months old. And so she said, well, God, I have to make a truck payment. So she went down to the bank. She figured the bank, and the bank said, well, we can't answer that. She said, no, my husband has a stroke. He can't talk right now, and I need to make a bank payment. And they said, well, we can't even answer the question whether or not he has a loan here. Personal HIPAA, Personal Privacy Act. So she said, well, what am I going to do? They said, go get a power of attorney, make yourself power of attorney. So I would stop right there and say, ladies and gentlemen, listening to Senior Talk, do you have a power of attorney? Mr. Smith, are you the power of attorney for your wife in case she has a stroke and can't communicate or is in the hospital and is kind of like down for the count but still with us? Mrs. Smith, do you have one on Mr. Smith? Oh, I have this on my wife. She has it on me. Something that happens to me and I'm incapacitated, she can carry on the business because she's power of attorney for Rex. I have power of attorney for my wife, Michael. We have that. We've had it for many years because we don't want to get put in that position of have to slow everything down and they can't make the financial decisions. These are things you could all be doing. You just don't have to sit there and say, well, I've got everything all fixed up here or we're all set. Well, you're not if you can't answer these questions. Do you need to transfer title of the house or car or the duplex? Rex, my husband died. What do I need to do? Who do I need to call to transfer the title? Well, we've talked about this. If you own your home and your car, especially your home, with the rights of survivorship, you don't have to do anything. It automatically goes to you, all right? If you owned it otherwise, like tenants in common, you're going to have trouble. You need to go see an attorney right now. If you don't know how you own, what title you're in, call me. I'll see if I can look it up for you for free, or call your attorney and talk to them, or your loan officer and talk to them. Well, last time you bought a house, for sure. Okay, just give us a call. I have a senior line, 330-5534. That's 319-330-5534. I'll help you through this all I can. I really think you should go to your bank and check on all your accounts and make sure that you have a POD on your account so that something happens to Mrs. Smith, that Mr. Smith can keep on going with the bank account. That is for sure. Well, let's ask the big question. The big elephant in the room would be, do you have a will? Okay, you both. You have. Well, yes, Rex, we do. We're ahead of the ball game. No, you're not ahead of the game. You're ahead of others, but you're not ahead of the game. You have a will. All right, now Mr. Smith died. Mr. Smith he's gone. The funeral's all over, and all those things are, quote, back to normal, which they'll never be. Things are back to normal, and Mrs. Smith is at home. And now my question would be this: Mrs. Smith, do you have a will? Well, no, we had a will, and now Mr. Smith's gone. Well, now you need a will, because now you are the head of the household. You now own the house. You now own the car. You now own the bank account. So what happens to you? You get run over tomorrow afternoon. What happens to you? Well, it goes to our daughter. Well, not so fast. Not if you don't have a will. It's going to go to the Iowa court system. They'll decide what happens to things. Now, there are some statutes, of course, where things would be directed, but if you have a will, you direct them, not the Iowa court system. Who do you want to, so to speak, be in bed with on the finances? The Iowa courts or your own will, for God's sakes? The answer is your own will. Get with it. Do you need one? Absolutely. How will you pay the heat bill if you don't have the checkbook? Now, this is like an emergency situation. Well, I going to send a check. I can't, as soon as Mr. Smith died, if it was his account, they'll stop the account. Supposed to write a check. Well, he did all the banking. He did all those things for us. I don't have a clue. Or the other way around, she did all that. She took care of all that for us. I don't have a clue. That's kind of the way it is at our house. I have a half a clue, pretty good clue, but my wife does all that. So I guess I could fish out a checkbook and pay the heat bill. The heat bill is going to come due. They'll come and shut the heat off. Now, this sounds like emergency type things, but folks, don't let it get to that level. Don't do that. And guess who's in charge here? I want you to go look in the mirror. That's who's in charge of all these things. It's you. So my dad, when we were a kid, he was a hard-charging guy, great guy, salesman. He'd march us in there, my brother and I. He'd make me stand and say, "Who do you see in the mirror?" I'd always say, "Babe Ruth." Duke Snyder, I'm a baseball guy. No, it's not really who you see. Well, that's who I want to see. I want to see Duke Snyder. I want to see Babe Ruth. Well, what you're looking at is you. And what you're looking at, Rex, you're looking at the guy who's going to make you, going to break you, going to make you successful, going to make you happy, going to make you a fun guy, going to make you a family guy, going to make you live in Iowa City, going to make you live in Ohio. That's the guy you're looking at. So basically, he's trying to tell us that there's nobody to blame, there's nobody to thank, there's nobody to do anything other than yourself. So take the bull by the horns. He took my brother in over the years a few times, and my brother got the same thing. He told me he was a football player. That's not what he wanted to hear. He was just trying to drive us in the right directions, and he did a pretty good job, if I do say so. Well, a senior man told me this. He said, this is a couple weeks ago. I was looking for my nice new drill that I've had for years. He's really good. I've had my names on everything. I was in my shop. I didn't find it, so I don't know where the heck I did it. So I resigned to the fact that I went out to Lowe's and I bought another one. It's a lighter weight. It's handier, but I missed my old drill, my old steel case Milwaukee drill. I missed that thing. I've had that for years. Now I find the old one. He says, I guess if I had all my stuff organized, I would have known right where my old drill was, and I wouldn't have this new one. And I said, yep, that is exactly right. That's exactly a really, really good reason to be organized right there. I've had many, many people tell me that they came across something, and then they found the other one. Well, folks, it's all because of what you don't do. It's all because of something you're not doing. It's all because of you don't know where things are. It's all because you don't have things organized. So that's the moral of today's lesson, and it's not a lesson. Today's story is get organized and get back. Well, I want you to know, too, folks, that students are back. They're not quite, but they're coming back. You want to drive downtown more and more every day. So if you have any ideas of going downtown and visiting a place downtown, you might want to do it now while some of the 35,000 wacky kids are not here. So, there's been a lot in the news lately about the Big Ten, and they've taken in Oregon and Washington into the Big Ten. They took in USC and UCLA. So now it's the Big 16 right now, as a matter of fact. Is it 16 or 18 in the Big Ten? Tommy, do you know? Is it 16 or 18 in the Big Ten? Where are we at?
With Washington and Oregon, that would be 18.
All right, we're up to 18. So everybody's saying we need to get two more, make a 20, and make two 10-team divisions and go from there. That's kind of the battle plan, I would assume, at this level. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Here's what going to happen here. Well, Iowa, the University of Iowa was feeling their oats. They played down at Iowa Field, old Iowa Field, down at basically it was where the EPB building, English Philosophy Building. It's on it was right outside to the west of Nagel Lumber on Burlington Street, right to the west there, and then north a little bit, right northwest of Nagel Lumber, or on the other side is right on the south side of the Iowa Avenue Bridge on the east side of the river. All right, if you go if you're out driving around or on your electric bike or for a walk, if you go to the east end of the Iowa Avenue Bridge and look right at the very east end, you'll see a big cement pillar. That's the last remaining vestige of anything of old Iowa Field. So that's where Iowa Field was. Well, guess what? The University of Iowa, they were starting to field some oats. 1920, 1921, we were unbeaten, and I believe national champs in 1921. Mythical, I'm sure. So it was a pretty neat thing, and they started talking about a new football stadium. Well, construction of what is now Kinnick Stadium started in the spring of 1929, and the crews worked 24 hours a day. And it was completed in 28 weeks, so that would be 5 months. That sound about right? When did the rec say they started? What month? Early in the spring. So we're going to call it April 1st. So that gives them April, May, June, July, August. So they would have been ready for a game in September, right along in there. All right. The construction site became a small town with over 300 employees and supply trucks arriving every day and every night. Now, if you want to see something that I think looks like this, go out on 965 and Forever Green Road. So you know where the prison is in Oakdale, and on 965. It's a medical classification center, which is long-term for prison. And go up to the new Hy-Vee store, which is in Coralville, not Northleaf, but the new one, where the new hospital is. Go up there during the day and look at the cars parked over there. There are hundreds of workers' cars over there, just like this stadium would have been. That's as close as I could come to an analogy. Okay, so that's what happened. And guess what happened? While the stands and playing were completed on schedule, there was not sufficient time for the ground around the stadium to be landscaped, and the area was a mass of mud. Fans had been advised to park on the east side of the river, on the downtown side of the river, because there was no parking available near the stadium. So, like all Iowa fans, and none of them listened, of course, and many of them failed to hear or heed the warning, and many parked on the now newly sodded and rain-soaked University Hospital lawn, resulting in deep cuts and a total quagmire. Honest to God, that's just the way we fans are. The announcements for the plans for the 42,500-foot stadium were made in October of 1928. 1 week and less than a year later, the stadium had been completed, and Iowa did. So when they announced it, they built it in 5 months. Well, guess what? It was a $500,000 bond issue was sold, and as noted, the prospectus was in March 28th of 1929. There you go. Plays right into the April 1st thing. 5% interest. The bonds were scheduled to mature in 13 years. Cost of the stadium, Kinnick Stadium, $497,000. So in other words, $500,000. And there were some ominous clouds, other than rain clouds, we would say. And that was the fact that there was the economy wasn't doing well. And guess what? Athletic Director Belting resigned in April 2026. He quit. Well, guess what? As of today, our athletic director on Monday, Gary Barter, retired. So we're right back to, and we have a woman who's athletic director. Congratulations. Now the AD at the University of Iowa. So we're kind of right back in there. Well, guess what else happened? May 25th, 1929, the Big Ten kicked Iowa out of the Big Ten. What? Iowa got booted out of the Big Ten on May 25th, 1929, for alleged recruiting violations. And that was effective January 1, 1930. So here's Iowa, got a brand new stadium. They could hardly pay for it. The depression is hit. They can't pay for the bonds, which they couldn't. The athletic director quit, and Iowa gets booted out of the Big Ten. What else could go wrong? Well, guess what? A lot of they couldn't play us. We could not schedule a Big Ten team. So one team agreed to play us. One team, and that was good old PU, good old Purdue. So we played the likes of, get this, Yale. Now, Yale was a really, really big deal back then. We played Oklahoma State. Now, that would have been like a Oklahoma State, a land-grant school back then. They didn't probably have much going for them. Centennial of Louisiana. Detroit Mercy, Marquette. Penn State, they would have been they are land-grant. They weren't in the Big Ten. And Northwestern. None of those were in the Big Ten. 1931, we played Pitt. We played Texas A&M, and we played George Washington, for God's sake. They're always known for their football. So that's what happened. Just what goes around comes around in Iowa football. The Big Ten is back to normal, I guess. For a while, we'll see what happens. So that's what we're up to, folks. I've got all kinds of things to talk about. I'm just full of gas or something else, my wife would say. But anyhow, that's the story. I'm going to be back next week. I want you to know that. I got a great story next week, I think, a little tidbit here. I'll answer you a little question first. Before I go, here's the question for you. Why were Brown Street and North Gilbert Street paved with bricks before any other street in Iowa City? Brown Street runs east and west up on the north side, up in the Goosetown area. Why were Brown Street and North Gilbert Street paved with bricks before any other streets in Iowa City? Here are three possible answers. Number one, let's face it, folks, there are a lot of big, fancy houses, and back in the day, big, fancy, influential people up there, and they called City Hall and said, by golly, we're big shots. We want this street, no more mud. Okay, that's one scenario. Number two, there was a brickyard at the east end of Brown Street, so the brickyard was up there. Why not make it? Or number three, it was the route from the several churches downtown to Oakland and St. Joseph cemeteries. What do you think the answer was?
I would have just guessed they were both major thoroughfares, but I don't think
that's
that's
exactly
it.
right.
Oh,
They were thoroughfares, and they were the main route to the cemeteries. Good job, Tommy. Good job, Tommy.
No, I didn't think about that.
So people were thinking, rightfully so, back then, the main route to the cemetery from, look at maybe St. Mary's and St. Wentz and the First Christian Church and Congregational and the Methodist Church and all those things downtown area. That's how they got there. And in 1890, that was in the late 1800s, in 1895, the first street to get paved in Iowa City, paved with cement, Portland cement, was where? Was Clinton Street. From Washington, Clinton Street, north up to about Jefferson Street. That was the first paved street, 1895. So there you go. You think that things don't think. See, they had road work even back then. They were all tied up with road work in Iowa City. So I've had more fun to Barrel of Monkeys as always here on Senior Talk. So I wanted to say thanks for listening. I want to thank each and every one of you who served our country. Hello to all my friends at the Coralville American Legion, the Solon American Legion, Oxford American Legion, Iowa City American Legion. Thank you, all of you men and women who served our country, and thank you so much. So let's go Hawks. Let's have a great week. Well, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. So long.
Looking for a place with a fun, casual atmosphere? Check out the Solon American Legion, a downtown staple for decades and a gathering place for veterans of all ages from all over the area. The Solon American Legion focuses on the basics, like home-style breakfast, diner-style baskets and appetizers, and your favorite cold beer on tap.